How we are the way we are. One sec. Thinking. Pausing. Rearranging furniture.
Wait,
Oh, I know we pause it. Okay.
we are when we're unwilling to consider or be with our own inauthenticity, when we cover up our inauthenticity, when we cover up this kind of being used, this what our lives are being used for. I want to give an opportunity to consider what happens. And I want to give an opportunity to consider it deeply and profoundly. There's a kind of resignation which occurs, kind of being stuck with this being used by when we're unwilling to take a look at it. The single most powerful characteristic about human beings, for those people who actually look at and come to engage with the questions in which we're engaged tonight, is this aspect of covering up and the resignation that goes with it. When you cover up the options which are using you, you really resign yourself to those options. I'm asking you to take a look at that for yourself, that when you're being used, if you cover up being used, you're then resigned to the being used. So the very fight, the very struggle against the unwillingness to look at our own being used leaves us with a kind of resignation to those options which are using us. It's only in coming to confront our own inauthenticity, only in coming to confront that it isn't we who are thinking, but it is it which thinks and we who have the thoughts. It's only in confronting that it isn't we who feel, but it who feels, and we who have the feelings that it feels, that you're presented with anything other than the resignation. So there's a very strange thing going on in the interaction between us and what we're considering here. In one way, we're being invited to consider that we live in this trap of the being in which we showed up as being. And in the normal course of events, we resist that with all of our might. We try to avoid it, try to get away from it, try to keep demonstrating to ourselves that we've got some choice in the matter. Again, I make the distinction between choice and options. I know you've got lots of options, but I'm saying that there's no choice. We've only got the possibility which we inherited, the possibility into which we were thrown. We're thrown to be this particular way. We're thrown into this kind of being that has this particular set of options. And I know that I'm asking you to confront the inauthenticity which we are, the lack of possibility which we are. And I know that it screams against that. It wants to avoid any recognition of its own mechanism, of the mechanism which it is. But in our avoiding, coming to grips with our inauthenticity, we really resign ourselves to the inauthenticity, the cover up, the struggle to avoid, the trying to get away, the convincing ourselves that we've got choices. All of that leaves us resigned to the options which are using us, the whole cover up, the whole attempt to avoid the discomfort, the embarrassment, the whatever it is for you, that confronting this kind of authenticity is. That leaves you resigned to the inauthenticity. The cover up itself leaves a person resigned. And if you're with human beings, like just being with them, you begin to see this profound kind of resignation that we are. If you stand in the possibility of this resignation to these options which are using us, that we cover up with our franticness, with our attempts to look good, with all those ways in which we cover up, you begin to see this deep resignation, this kind of mood of resignation, which people are. And look, I want you to understand exactly what I mean by a mood of resignation. I mean that environment of being into which you wake up in the morning. I don't mean something like what you see in a mental institution. I mean that environment of being into which you and I wake up in the morning. That waking up more tired than we were when we went to bed. That waking up to no sense of freedom, no sense of possibility, no sense of openness, no sense of opportunity, no sense of real joy. So when I talk about the resignation which we are, I'm talking about that mood, if you like, that environment of being which encapsulates us from the time that we wake up. When you're with other people, like in a meeting, stand back for a moment and take a look at the environment of being which is available to them. Is there any sense of possibility? Are they thinking? Are they feeling? Are they speaking out of a sense of the possibility of life, out of the privilege which is to be alive? Or are they really speaking out of this resignation which I'm asking you to confront that we are, this resignation to the options that own us? I say that that resignation, which is the environment of being in which we live, that resignation is held in place by our addiction to looking good, by our absolute unwillingness to confront our own inauthenticity. And by inauthenticity, what I mean is that our lives are being used for the survival of our identity. The I which is pointed at, and I think that our lives are being used for making ourselves right and others wrong. I will bet that every complaint in your life really represents a racket. That you have that about which you are complaining in your life because it somehow makes you right. You watch the way people use their illnesses. You watch the complaints that people have about their work, about their jobs. Most people's complaints about their work, about their jobs are a racket which enables them to avoid the domination of their job like an opportunity. See, if your job showed up like an opportunity, like the possibility of making a difference, like the possibility of making a contribution, if your job showed up like a space of freedom in which to express everything that you had, everything that you were, then you'd have to be responsible for the opportunity your job is. But as long as you can say they and it and the boss and the circumstances of your job, and they don't listen, I say that that's a racket. And I'm inviting you to take a look at your complaints like a racket. The complaints about our work, for the most part, help us to avoid the domination, help us to avoid the responsibility, the opportunity which our work is. You know, I know in your relationship you're saving something. You don't give everything you got. You're saving a little bit. Because someday, the guy's going to come on the white horse. And when the guy comes on the white horse, then you're going to get everything. Not to him. Or not to her. No, they don't understand you. They don't fill in your own complaint. When I say that lets you off the hook, that helps you to avoid the domination of the responsibility of holding your relationship as an opportunity to express yourself fully and totally. See, if only she, fill in the blank. That's your racket. And when we get authentic about the kind of beings we are, the kind of beings that we see ourselves to be when we want to be authentic about it, is a racketeer. And the racket is whatever it is you're complaining about. You're too old. Being old's a racket. I had the privilege of a very close relationship with a man who was 84 when I was working with him. Bucky Fuller was anything but an old man at 84. Yes, he had certain constraints that his body's age put on his actions, but they did not show up like a racket for Bucky. They didn't keep him from being fully and totally and absolutely alive. So I'm inviting you to stand in the possibility that if you want to be authentic about yourself and take an honest look, what you're going to see is a racketeer. And that's what life's about. The being of human beings leaves human beings as racketeers. We've got this racket. And like all racketeers, we expect the payoff from the racket. The racket, the payoff is we get to be right. Your racket lets you be right, or it allows you to make somebody wrong. Lots of people in their 60s are still making their parents wrong. Still making their upbringing wrong. People would rather be right in their relationships than love. You know what he did? Whatever he did is more important than love. You stand in that possibility. Now, I know it's not your relationship we're talking about, but you stand in that possibility and look at the relationships of your friends. And you see, looking out from the possibility, that you would exchange being right about what he did or she did. You would exchange that for love. Or they would, your friends. Our unwillingness to come to grips with this essential nature of being for human beings leaves us living a resignation to the options which use us and spending our lives covering up that we're being used. And it's the cover up that we're being used. The cover up that our lives are devoid of possibility and only present us with options. It's the covering up which ensures that we'll be stuck in the resignation to those options. I know this isn't pretty what I'm telling you. And I know that if you're like most people, you're sitting there figuring out a way that's not true about you. Or at least it's not always true about you. Life is a racket. And you and I are racketeers. And if you can get beyond the horror of that, to just be with the is of it, I say that there's power in that. And you have to see whether what I say turns out to be so. I'm talking about the possibility that accepting your own deep, profound, inauthenticity, accepting that your life is being used by it. I'm saying that accepting that, not like the truth, not like something you believe, but accepting it as a possibility in which you are willing to stand and look out at your everyday being in the world and your engagement, your everyday concerns. I'm saying that the acceptance of that inauthenticity will lead to a breaking up of the resignation which you are. The resignation of the environment of being into which you wake up when you wake up in the morning. The day by day in this petty pace about which Shakespeare spoke, not like a set of circumstances, because I know you've got a lot of titillating circumstances in your life, but like a mood out of which one lives. I know how to put on the good face. I know how to look good, and I know you know how to look good. And television and most of what we consider to be public is about looking good. And if you look out from the possibility that your life is about looking good, you're going to see that a hell of a lot of what you're up to is about looking good. You don't mean it. And sometimes you know you don't mean it. You don't even believe in the things you believe in, and sometimes you know you don't believe in them. But you keep looking good about it. You're afraid to express your own doubts for fear of not looking good. And again, while I don't profess to be telling the truth, I'm not a guy in a diner. So I'm inviting you to look out from the possibility that you are a racketeer, that your relationships, that your work, your job, the things in your life are really about getting these payoffs. And the best place to look is those things about which you're complaining in life. I don't like. I don't want. You see, you and I are willing to sacrifice the quality of our life for these payoffs. Like I said, in our relationships, we're willing to sacrifice love. I mean, the real presence of love. Like, maybe you can remember, we're willing to sacrifice that for being right and making the other person wrong. We're willing to sacrifice that to dominate the other person, to manipulate them, to get them to be the way we want them to be, and to avoid any manipulation or domination from them. We're willing to sacrifice love in order to win. To avoid loss, we're willing to sacrifice love in order to justify ourselves. If any inkling of an opening for generosity shows up in the relationship, we close it down very quickly in order to keep ourselves justified in the position that we're in. We're willing to give up, to sacrifice our own self-expression. See, on your tombstone, what they're going to put on your tombstone when you die, something was left. And we don't know what it is or was. So they ain't going to put on your tombstone used up. Because you ain't going to get used up. No, you're going to save it till Prince Charming comes. Then you're going to give it. But not now. Not here. Not for this. Not for what you got. Most people are going to go to their grave with the sense that there was something in them that never got expressed. That there was something there, something of real value, something that could make a difference, something that could have been a contribution, that just never got expressed. And most of us are going to go to our grave like that. Because you see, we're willing to sacrifice being used. I don't mean being used like I was speaking about before. I mean being used by being used, I mean using ourselves. Most of us are willing to sacrifice our own full self-expression for the avoidance of responsibility. To avoid the domination of taking on life like an opportunity. Most people are happy to give up their happiness. They don't have any problem sacrificing their happiness, not as long as they can be right. See, I say any place in your life where you are unhappy, I'll bet that right there you're being right or making somebody or something else wrong. You've exchanged your own happiness for being right or making somebody or something else wrong. Okay. It isn't you anyhow, it's it. You just along for the ride, just being used. What I'm asking you to do is to start to be in the place, the possibility, looking out at your life, being in that possibility, looking out at your own life, to see that that's what it is using your life for. That it's willing to sacrifice love, vitality, happiness, and self-expression. See, I know you want to be happy. You are, but you want to be. Let's share one little tip with you. I told you I don't give tips. I said I don't have answers or solutions or prescriptions. Just one little tip. You aren't ever going to get happy. Ever. I promise. You aren't ever going to get... I know you know all the fairy tales and the stories, and I know you intoxicate yourself with romantic sensations that someday you're going to be happy. As soon as X, then you're going to be happy. I promise you will never get happy. That's a promise. The pursuit of happiness is the only guarantee against it. By accident, almost anything else might leave you happy. But the pursuit of happiness is an absolute sure guarantee against happiness. So I can very comfortably promise you that you're never going to get happy. No, it will sacrifice your happiness for that. And you will cover up that that is what is happening. You will cover it up from yourself, you'll cover it up from others. And that cover up will ensure that you live in an environment of resignation to the options which are using you. And your life will be a clever strategy at best. And if you're real good at it, you won't know that. You're very good at it, you won't even know that you don't know it. See, the cost for those things is always our aliveness. That's what it sacrifices in order to accomplish that. Now, human beings, I told you, the kind of being that a human being is different than the kind of being a dog is. That's a fairly safe statement. I told you that one of the things about the being that human beings are is that that being is very concerned for identity. The dog has no concern for his identity. So, sometimes by interacting with human beings, you can get the dog a little bit concerned about his identity. Makes him very crazy. And they start to be psychological. Like human beings are. It's interesting. But it's true. Some of you got dogs that are hung up on love. Like you are. Well, the other aspect of being for human beings is this aspect of making up meaning. It's kind of like, a thunderstorm. If there's a thunderstorm, thunderstorms are very unpredictable. Anybody who reads the newspaper or watches television, the weather part of it, the thunderstorms are unpredictable. I mean, they can do a certain amount of predicting like you can about human beings, but for the most part, thunderstorms are unpredictable like human beings are. It's a certain range in which you can predict, but then they somehow turn out to be somewhat unpredictable. Well, thunderstorms and human beings are very much alike, except for one thing. Thunderstorms don't talk, and human beings talk. And what they talk when they talk about the thunderstorm, which they are, is they talk meaning. It's kind of like a thunderstorm. When there's a thunderstorm, you say, the thunderstorm is evil. The thunderstorm is up to no good. No, the thunderstorm is watering the little plants. Isn't that sweet? The thunderstorm is watering the little plants so that spring can come again and life can be renewed. If you stand back from yourself far enough, you'll see that you are very much like a thunderstorm. You're a mechanism very much like a thunderstorm. It's true that you're not very predictable except within certain limits. Like a thunderstorm is predictable within certain limits, but not totally predictable. But you're a thunderstorm with the mouth. That is to say, you give meaning to the direction and the actions of the thunderstorm, when in fact the directions and the actions of the thunderstorm, while not entirely predictable, are nevertheless very mechanical. See, a thunderstorm is a mechanism. That is to say, it has no purpose, it has no meaning. It isn't going anyplace. It isn't trying to do something. It's not trying to create a flood or water the little plants. The survival is like a description. In the thunderstorm, it rains. In the being of human beings, there is survival. The one difference is that the kind of being that human beings are, unlike the thunderstorm, they can attach meaning to all of this. I say, this is devoid of meaning. It doesn't mean anything that it is about your being right. That's just the way it is. See, if you're feeling badly about having your life being used for making you right and others wrong and so on and so forth, if you're feeling badly about that, that's you ascribing meaning to the thunderstorm. You told this 1 minute soap opera out of a thunderstorm. But
We'll continue. Hope you're having the best day ever. Peace, love. Bye-bye.